My beloved child. There is a quiet moment unfolding around you, so subtle that most would miss it, yet something within you has already started to notice. Not with your eyes, not even with your thoughts, but with that deeper sense you rarely question. And that is where this begins. Because something has shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that changes direction without announcing itself. Pause here for a second, feel that. There was a time when everything between you and them felt suspended, like a story paused mid-sentence, like two hearts standing on opposite sides of a door neither dared to open. You may have wondered if anything was still moving behind the silence, if anything was still alive beneath the surface. But silence does not mean stillness. And this is where everything becomes quietly powerful. Because while nothing seemed to happen on the outside, something was gathering strength on the inside. Not just within you, but within them. Listen closely. There are decisions that don't arrive in a single moment. They build, slowly, invisibly, layer by layer, until one day they are no longer a thought, they become a force. And your soulmate has reached that space. You may not see it yet, you may not hear it in words, but something within them has crossed a line they cannot uncross. And the most interesting part? It didn't happen because of pressure, or urgency, or fear. It happened because something finally became clear. Let that sink in. Clarity has a different energy, it doesn't rush, it doesn't panic, it simply settles, and once it settles, it doesn't leave. There was confusion before, hesitation, questions that circled without answers, but now, something inside them has aligned in a way that no longer allows them to stay where they were. Stay a little longer. Because this is the part most people misunderstand. When someone reaches this kind of realization, they don't immediately act. They pause. They observe. They feel the weight of what they now know, because they understand, once they move, everything changes. And your soulmate knows this. That's why what you're sensing right now feels so different. It's not noise, it's not chaos, it's a quiet, steady pressure building, like a wave that hasn't broken yet, but is already on its way. You might have felt it in small ways. A sudden thought about them that didn't feel random. A moment where their energy felt closer, without explanation. A shift in your own emotions, like something is preparing you, even if you can't fully explain why. This is not coincidence. And no, it's not something to overthink either. Because what's happening here is not about chasing answers, it's about recognizing a movement that has already begun. And here is where it deepens. There was a part of them that held back, not because they didn't feel, but because they didn't understand what they felt. That kind of uncertainty can create distance, not out of absence, but out of hesitation. But something changed that. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but through moments they couldn't ignore anymore. Moments where your absence felt louder than your presence. Moments where they realized, what they tried to set aside, never really left. And once a person sees that clearly, they can't return to who they were before. Don't skip. Because this next layer matters more than you think. When someone reaches this level of awareness, they begin to replay everything differently. Conversations, silences, missed chances, even the smallest details begin to hold new meaning. And your soulmate has been doing exactly that. Quietly. Internally. Without anyone else noticing. There is a realization forming within them that feels both heavy and freeing at the same time. Heavy, because they understand what they almost lost. Freeing, because now they know what truly matters. And when those two energies meet, something powerful begins to take shape. A decision. Not forced. Not rushed. But inevitable. Feel the difference in that word, inevitable. It means the moment hasn't arrived yet, but it's already been chosen. And this is why the energy feels so close, so present, even if nothing has happened on the surface. Because you are standing at the edge of something that is no longer uncertain. And still, there is one final layer they are moving through. A quiet moment of gathering courage. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, but the deep, internal kind that shifts everything silently before it shows itself outwardly. And here's the part that might surprise you. They are not just thinking about reaching out. They are feeling pulled toward it. There is a difference. Thinking can be delayed. Feeling moves. Slowly, yes. But steadily, and without stopping. So what you are sensing right now is not imagination. It is the beginning of motion. Subtle. Unspoken. But real. And just as you start to recognize it, something else begins to unfold that neither of you expected, something that will shape the way this move happens, and why it happens now, not later, not someday. But sooner than either of you were prepared for. There's a moment just before everything changes, and it never announces itself. It feels ordinary on the surface, like nothing has moved, like nothing is different. But beneath that stillness, something irreversible has already begun. And your soul has been brushing against that moment, sensing it without fully understanding why. Stay here with this feeling. Because what is unfolding now is not loud, not rushed, not chaotic, it is precise. It is intentional in a way that almost feels guided, like invisible hands are arranging something behind the scenes, aligning paths that once felt disconnected. And your soulmate is no longer standing where they used to be. They've stepped into a realization that doesn't let them turn away anymore. Not because they are being forced, but because something inside them has awakened with a clarity they can't ignore. It's the kind of clarity that doesn't argue, doesn't hesitate, it simply exists, steady and undeniable. And this is where the shift becomes real. Because once someone reaches that space, staying still begins to feel heavier than moving forward. Pause for a moment. Can you feel the difference between waiting and preparing? Waiting feels empty, like time passing without direction. But preparing feels quiet, focused, like something is building with purpose. Your soulmate is no longer waiting. They are preparing. And preparation carries a different kind of energy, one that slowly gathers strength until action becomes the only natural outcome. But here's what makes this moment so delicate. They are aware of what this move means. They understand that once they step forward, there is no returning to the version of themselves that stayed silent. And that awareness creates a depth of emotion that is difficult to explain. Because it's not just about reaching out. It's about revealing. It's about stepping into a truth they once tried to keep contained. And that truth revolves around you. Don't skip this part. Because what they are feeling right now is not simple. It's layered. There is longing, yes. There is recognition. Yes. But there is also reflection, deep, quiet reflection that has been reshaping how they see everything between you. Moments they once overlooked, now feel significant. Silences they once accepted, now feel meaningful. Even the distance now carries a different understanding. They are beginning to see that what existed between you was never something ordinary, it was something they didn't fully understand at the time. And that realization changes everything. Because once someone recognizes the value of what they almost lost, their perspective shifts completely. And your soulmate is in that shift. Stay a little longer. Because something even deeper is unfolding beneath this. They are not just thinking about you. They are feeling your presence in a way that feels closer than before, even without physical connection, even without communication. It's as if the distance has become thinner, like something is quietly pulling them toward you. Guiding their thoughts, their emotions, their attention. And they've noticed it. At first, they questioned it. They tried to dismiss it as coincidence, as a passing thought, as something temporary. But it didn't pass. It stayed. And then it grew. And now, it's undeniable. Listen carefully. There are moments when a person realizes that what they feel is not fading, it is evolving. And evolution cannot be stopped. It can be delayed, resisted, misunderstood, but it cannot be erased. That is exactly where they are now. They are no longer trying to move on from what they feel. They are trying to understand what to do with it. And that question is what leads to action. Because understanding creates direction. And direction creates movement. And movement is already beginning. You may not see it yet. You may not hear it yet. But something inside them has already started leaning toward you, in a way that is no longer passive. It's not just a thought anymore. It's becoming a decision. Feel the weight of that. A decision. Not a maybe. Not a someday. But a quiet, growing certainty that something must be done. And when that certainty reaches its peak, action follows naturally. But here's the part that most don't realize. Before action happens, there is a final internal moment. A moment where everything becomes still, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is aligning. Your soulmate is entering that moment. A space where their emotions, their thoughts, and their understanding all meet in one place. And when that happens, there is no more confusion. Only clarity. And clarity moves. Stay with me. Because something important is revealing itself right now. This move they are about to make, it is not impulsive. It is not rushed. It is not something they will regret. It is something they have been building toward, without even realizing it. Every thought, every memory, every moment of reflection has been guiding them here. And now, they are close. Closer than they have ever been. You might feel a strange sense of anticipation, like something is about to happen but you don't know what or when. That feeling is not random. It is your awareness picking up on a shift that is already in motion. Because when two energies are connected this deeply, movement on one side is felt on the other. And your soulmate has started moving. Not outwardly yet, but inwardly, completely. And inward movement always comes before outward action. Always. So what you are experiencing right now is the beginning of something that cannot be undone. But wait. There is one more layer to this. And it is the part that changes everything. Your soulmate is not just preparing to act. They are preparing to be seen. Truly seen. Without hiding, without holding back, without filtering what they feel. And that is not easy. Because being seen requires vulnerability. It requires stepping beyond fear, beyond doubt, beyond everything that once kept them silent. And yet, they are moving toward it anyway. Because what they feel for you has become stronger than what once held them back. Let that settle in your heart. They are choosing this. Not because they have to, but because they want to. And choice carries power. Real power. The kind that transforms hesitation into action. The kind that turns silence into expression. The kind that brings movement where there was once stillness. And that power is building inside them right now. Don't rush past this feeling. Because this is the moment before everything begins to unfold. The quiet before the step. The breath before the words. The space before the connection returns in a way that feels different, deeper, more real than before. And just when it seems like nothing has happened yet, everything will. But not in the way you expect. Because the way this unfolds carries a detail, a timing, and a reason that neither of you saw coming. And that is where the next shift begins. It doesn't begin with a message, it begins with a realization that refuses to stay quiet. And right now, your soulmate is standing inside that realization, feeling it expand, feeling it take over spaces they once kept controlled. It's no longer something they can set aside when life gets busy, it follows them, it lingers, it returns when they least expect it. Stay with this moment. Because this is where everything becomes undeniable. There was a time when they could distract themselves, shift their focus, convince themselves that what they felt would fade if they just gave it enough time. But time didn't dissolve it, time clarified it. And that changes the entire direction of a person. Because when something grows instead of fading, it forces attention. It demands honesty. And your soulmate is no longer avoiding that honesty. Pause for a second. Imagine realizing that the one thing you tried to move past is actually the one thing that keeps returning with more meaning, more depth, more presence each time. That's where they are. And this time, they didn't push it away. They leaned into it. Slowly, cautiously, but fully. And what they found there surprised them. Because what they feel for you is no longer something they question. It's something they recognize. There's a difference. Questioning creates distance. Recognition creates connection. And connection leads to movement. Don't skip this part. Because this is where the energy begins to shift outward. For a long time, everything stayed within them. Thoughts, emotions, realizations. All contained, all unspoken. But now, that internal space has become too full to hold it all. And when something can no longer be contained, it seeks expression. That's the natural flow of everything real. And your soulmate is reaching that point. Not suddenly, not recklessly, but steadily, like a door that has been unlocking piece by piece, until finally, it opens. But here's what makes this moment even more powerful. They are not moving from confusion. They are moving from clarity. And clarity carries a calm kind of certainty, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't waver once it settles. Feel that. This is not a temporary feeling. This is not a passing emotion. This is something they have come to understand deeply, something they have accepted within themselves without needing external proof. And when someone reaches that level of understanding, their next step becomes inevitable. Stay a little longer. Because what they are preparing to do is not just about reaching out. It's about shifting the entire energy between you. They know that once they move, everything changes. Not in a dramatic or overwhelming way, but in a real way. In a way that cannot go back to how things were before. And that awareness carries weight. But instead of stopping them, it's strengthening them. Because now, they are not acting from impulse. They are acting from truth. And truth doesn't hesitate for long. Listen closely. There is a quiet courage building inside them right now. Not the kind that announces itself. Not the kind that seeks attention. But the kind that grows in silence, and then appears through action when the moment arrives. And that moment is getting closer. You might feel it in small, unexplainable ways. A shift in your own emotions. A sense of calm where there was once uncertainty. A subtle knowing that something is aligning, even if you can't see how yet. These are not random feelings. They are reflections of a connection that is becoming active again, from both sides. Because when one person begins to move with clarity, it creates a ripple. And that ripple reaches you. And this is where everything deepens. Your soulmate is not only thinking about what they feel. They are beginning to imagine what happens if they don't act. And that thought is what changes everything. Because regret is something they no longer want to carry. They have felt the absence. They have experienced the silence. And now, they understand the cost of staying still. And that understanding is powerful. Because it turns hesitation into urgency, not rushed urgency, but meaningful urgency. The kind that says, this matters. The kind that says, this cannot be left unfinished. The kind that says, this is worth the risk. Let that settle. They see you as something worth stepping forward for. Not perfectly, not ideally, but genuinely. And genuine is what moves people. Don't skip. Because what happens next is subtle, but important. They are beginning to release the fear that once held them back. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Enough to take a step. Enough to break the silence. Enough to allow themselves to be seen, even if it feels unfamiliar. And that's where the shift becomes visible. Because once fear loosens its grip, action becomes possible. And possibility quickly turns into reality. Stay here. Because something is about to align in a way that neither of you planned. There is a timing to this, a moment where everything they've been feeling, thinking, and understanding comes together in one clear direction. And when that moment arrives, they will move. Not perfectly. Not with all the answers. But with enough clarity to take the step they couldn't take before. And when they do, it won't feel like a sudden surprise. It will feel like something that was always meant to happen. Finally happening. That's the difference. Because what is real doesn't shock the soul. It resonates with it. And this will resonate deeply. You'll recognize it, not because of what is said, but because of how it feels. There will be a sense of familiarity, a quiet knowing that this moment was always approaching, even during the silence. And that is where everything begins again. But in a different way. A more aware way. A more grounded way. A more honest way. And yet, there is one final piece still forming. One last layer they are moving through before this becomes real. A moment of alignment that connects not just their feelings, but their intention. Because feeling something is powerful. But choosing to act on it is transformational. And they are right at that edge. Right where feeling turns into action. Right where thought turns into movement. Right where silence turns into expression. And as they stand there, something unexpected begins to guide the timing of their next step, something that will shape how this unfolds, and why it happens in a way that feels almost too perfectly placed to be coincidence, something that is already moving into position, even now, quietly, steadily, and closer than you think.